Hello, I am Yogini Sunita, and this is Meditation, Yoga, and Stuff podcast. I believe my dharma or my life's purpose is to share my understanding of meditation, yoga, and Ayurveda, holistic healing science of India. I make these amazing wisdoms accessible and adaptable for present times. So let's start.
Today I'm going to talk about Bhagavad Gita, and this is a wonderful topic very close to my heart. So I'm going to talk about what is Bhagavad Gita to begin with. You may have heard about it, and we need to try and understand Bhagavad Gita in context of Mahabharata. It's a really amazing story. We can call it Game of Thrones of India, ancient India, I should say, and it's all about becoming king. But this story reveals, the Mahabharata reveals the family drama basically, and it also tells us what is the right behavior, what is wrong behavior, and things like that. So let me give you some background about Mahabharata. So Mahabharata, it was war between two sides of cousins. And one side there were 100, and then other side there were 5 cousins. And the thing is, both sides, when we hear their story, they both feels right. And so we sit back and we start thinking that who is right here? And then from here, the story goes on. There is a lot of backstory about the 100 brothers, even the generations before, how this story came towards the war between two sides of cousins. And then these cousins are now facing each other in battlefield. And who is Krishna? Krishna here is he deity? Well, here Krishna is also one of the cousins from mother's side, from Arjuna. So we need to understand that these are relatives, and Krishna decided that he will not pick up a weapon. But then Arjuna suggests him, can you be Arjuna is one of the prince from the 5 brothers. And he suggests that, can you be my charioteer? So charioteer also also works as a boosting the morale of the warrior. Charioteer is Krishna. Now Arjuna is one of the 5 brothers who is amazing warrior. And he has never lost a war. In his life, he is known for his amazing skills as a warrior. And this fierce warrior here is now protecting his, we can say, his pride, his land, his principles also. And what's happening is the 100 brother, the leader of 100 brothers, the cousins, is not even giving them inch of land. He said even in the words like, I will not give you land even on a tip of a pin. And by their birthright, the 5 brothers have right to have this land. So this is where now both sides stand against each other. And it's not just both sides, because the family now has to take part in this as well. So Arjuna's grandfather, who him loves so much, is standing against him from his cousin sides, because his grandfather has taken an oath that whoever is on the throne, I'm going to support them. And the 100 brothers' father is on the throne at the moment. So he has to support these 100 brothers. Then the guru, Arjuna's guru, is also on the other side. And Arjuna's guru is recruited by the 100 brothers, the king, to give education to all 100 and plus these 5 cousins. So now these are just few examples. This is like there's so many people against him and so many people supporting him. And he's standing there and he is looking at so the war used to happen very ethically in India that time. So in the morning there used to be a couch where that was announcing the war starts. And in the evening, there was another count when the war used to finish, and they used to do the cremation ceremony for the dead. Doesn't matter which side they are from. And it was quite amazingly, there was a lot of ethical things in that. So before this war starts, Arjuna is standing in front of the line to lead his people. And he looks at all his relatives, his teachers in front of him, and he has to fight them. And this doesn't sit right with him. He has melted down. He almost starts shaking. And this is a warrior who has never lost any war. This is the warrior, who is unbeatable warrior. And he is now suffering from total meltdown. So now here comes the Krishna. Krishna is asking him what happened. And Arjuna says, how can I fight with these people, who are my loved ones, who I respect so much? How can I fight them? And here the question, Arjuna goes into total meltdown. The meltdown where he is completely almost lost the plot. He start asking question, what's the point? What's the point of all this? If I have to fight against my loved ones. So the question goes for quite some time. If you have experience in your life, situations where you're going to total meltdown, or if you have seen someone going through that, or if you have seen someone going through panic attack, or if you have experienced these kind of things, anxiety, that's what he was going through. He was literally asking question about everything. What is life? What's the point? And this is where Krishna starts answering his questions. Now, Krishna is, we can call it our higher self, our buddhi, or the divine self within us. And the divine within us is answering these questions. So the questions, when Arjuna asks that, why should I fight? Why do I have to fight this war? And here Arjuna asking this question, literally shaking, and Krishna tells him that because it is your dharma, it is your life's purpose. And Arjuna asks, who decides this? What is this all about? Then the concept of the karma also comes in, that you have taken a birth as a warrior. You have responsibility of so many people's life in your hands. And as a warrior, you need to protect them and you need to fight this war. Now, while this dialogue is happening and this question answer happening, we don't know how much time has lapsed, but there are 700 verses in Bhagavad Gita. And all these verses, the discussion is all about these questions arise in our life as well. And then Arjuna is not convinced, like it is my dharma, why you're saying these things. And Krishna goes on explaining in detail. So he talks about the secrets of the life. He talks about what is yoga. He talks about yoga as a meditation. So here Krishna gives the secret of the yoga as a meditation. And if we see what is true yoga is meditation. The physical movement, as we know, is very tiny part of yoga. The whole wisdom of yoga is very vast, and asana is tiny part of it. So yoga of the meditation. Then Krishna talks about the karma yoga. Karma yoga means where we work or continue working without any expectation of the fruit or without the thought given to the fruit. We just continue working and the reward may come, may not come, doesn't matter. Here Arjuna, the warrior prince, needs to do his dharma to fight this war. Now Arjuna also asks, why you are pushing me towards the war? And here Krishna explains that you, as a warrior, it is your dharma to save your people and protect your people. So you have to take this weapon and fight this war. Now, another concept we see also here is the three gunas, the sattva, rajas, tamas. the mind. This is all explained by Krishna. And also Krishna shows Arjuna, when Arjuna asks Krishna that, how do you know these answers? And this is where Krishna shows his cosmic form. And his cosmic form is where he shows that he is everywhere. And then the concept of Atma, Paramatma is explained. So this is a lot of things to unpack here. This is the top layer. The next layer is where the war is really not happening outside of Arjuna, but it is happening within. And the five brothers represent, Arjuna is shown as symbolically five brothers. So the five brothers is symbol of Pancha Mahabhuta. Also, Arjuna's chariot has 5 horses. And these 5 horses means our 5 senses. And these are unruly horses, only Krishna can control them. They're beautiful horses. They're white, beautiful horses, but very strong, but they're unruly. And you needed someone like Krishna, who is an expert charioteer, to make sure these horses going in right direction. And then Krishna himself is a symbolism of our higher self, our intellect, the higher intellect, the buddhi. And our buddhi, the intellect, has all these answers, but when we don't listen to it, we come to the war. And who is this war with? The 100 brothers is actually symbolizes as our thoughts, because hundreds of thoughts, we have hundreds of thoughts, right? And they're constantly moving, and some thoughts are actually good thoughts. So in this war also, some brothers are fighting with Arjuna, and some cousins are fighting with Arjuna, and others are fighting against him. And this tug of war happening in his mind, and which is literally this strong warrior has become literally non-moving being. He is completely lost the plot. He's completely shaking. He is not able to even hold his bow and arrow. So he has come to this situation where there is total meltdown. We don't know how much time has elapsed, but the whole Bhagavad Gita happens on this war field. And if we look at this, take this symbolism into our day-to-day life, our hundreds and thousands of our thoughts are constantly there. And we have to choose to serve thoughts working with us, and some thoughts are working against us. And we have to acknowledge that these are working against us, even though they are our thoughts, and we have to let them go. So this is the concept of like 100 cousins and 5 cousins fighting against each other. And most of the time, our negative thoughts are bigger in quantity, and our positive thoughts are less in quantity, but they are strong. But when this bombardment of hundreds of thoughts is constantly happening, the 5, even though they are good thoughts, kind of like lose the war. They start self-doubting, and they start asking questions that, what I'm doing? And this self-doubt comes from this questioning with our what's happening in our mind. And basically these thoughts are in plenty, so they are always there, and we have to take a stand against that no, this is my dharma, this is my path, this is what I'm choosing. And here also we know subconsciously that even though, say, if you're doing any project and you start the project with lots of hopes and lots of intention that this will be successful, but you really don't know what's going to happen, because there are things outside of your control. These things which are outside of your control are going to come up. And here we need to understand that when these things come up, we have to, again, without even thinking of the reward, if we continue our work, we may get bigger reward, we may not get even acknowledgement, doesn't matter, because the joy is the journey of doing this project which you have. And this is where Krishna talks about, there is a verse called Karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. That means that continue your work without thinking of the reward. And you will notice that everything falls in its place. So this is one of the concept. Then other concept we learn from this Bhagavad Gita is karma yoga. So when we say yoga in modern world, what images come in mind is basically people into different pretzel poses, doing different, standing on their head and things like that. That's what social media is pushing on our face. But the true yoga is also if you're doing the work with your joy and your heart, that is your yoga. That is the yoga, and you will see the examples around the world. I don't know if you heard about the hugging Amma. This is a beautiful woman from India, and she had a very horrible childhood, abused by her brother, physically beaten to death every day almost. And one day she saw Krishna, and Krishna gave her this wisdom that she went home and hugged her brother, and that completely transformed his mind. And she's known as Hugging Amma. She hugs people without any expectation. And she's not expecting anything. You can donate if you want. And from donation, she runs the food camps for old people, runs hospitals, things like that. So this is what example can be like, doing your work without any expectation. She is completely devoted to Krishna, and she's constantly talking Krishna. And when you hug her, all she says that, my child, my baby, in your language. So she's amazing. She's absolutely beautiful. I had really beautiful experience. Whenever she comes here, I make sure that I go and hug her. It's a really beautiful experience. And this kind of like selfless services are what basically is karma yoga. Another thing is bhakti yoga. We see the yoga of heart. And this compassion, this absolute surrender to the divine is bhakti yoga. And you will see that in modern world, we see that beautiful examples of bhakti yoga around us. The Krishna consciousness is completely devoted to the bhakti yoga, devoted to Krishna. And any type of devotion like this, the complete devotion, it gives or opens our heart fully and gives us that experience of compassion and love. And that's why the bhakti yoga is very powerful. And then Krishna also talks about the three gunas. Here, what is sattva and what is rajas and what is tamas? So let's explore rajas first. So what is rajas? Rajas is guna, that means happening. In this universe, all these three qualities are there. So whenever something is happening, whenever something is moving, it's rajas, state of rajas. So when we do movements, that is state of rajas. What will happen when we do excess of movement? We'll get tired, right? And so the tiredness moves towards the tamas quality. And we are mostly into this yo-yo of overdoing and crashing. A lot of time that happens, crash and burn. So what is tamas? Tamas is the state of rest, inertia, non-doing. It can be a beautiful state. We know through our relaxation practices of yoga that how beautiful it is. But what if we just decide that this is the beautiful state and we're going to just sit on our couch and do nothing? Then that is not going to work, right? So that doing nothing is not going to work. It will create imbalance. So when we do the things in balance, the rajas and tamas, when we bring it in balance, then it is going to create the state of sattva. Sattva is where we can say life balance. Sattva is where we can say that we do have a positive practices where instead of energy losing, they are energy gaining practices. So all energy gaining practices are sattvic practices. Energy gaining food is sattvic food. So you may say that, any fizzy drink gives me energy with sugar, that's a crash and burn energy. So it is going to give you that energy, but then the side effect of that is that it's going to be hit and then you are going to crash and that energy is going to come down. So sustainable positive energy, that is what sattva. And sattva is very beautiful energy. No matter what others say, you will feel, you will sense it in yourself. Say, for example, if you go to an amazing asana class and at the end of it, the whole physical movements are balanced with breathing practice as well as relaxation practice. And that after that relaxation practice, you feel that, oh, wow, this is such a beautiful feeling. I want to stay in this feeling. And that is the sattvic feeling. So where else do we get sattva in our life? So the sattva can come from food. The sattva can come from the good company. The sattva can come from the Mother Earth, nature. So all these are sattvic practices. And this explanation of sattva is beautifully given in Bhagavad Gita. And then also there are questions like that doing and non-doing. What is the concept of non-doing? So where Krishna explains that sometimes you have to be a doer and sometimes you have to be a non-doer. And this concept of doing and non-doing, where it comes from, what is this all about? So this is where we come back to again our dharma. Here Arjuna cannot just sit down and do nothing because he is the designated warrior. He is the main warrior who is going to lead his people into this war. And this war is necessary because the 5 brothers had tried everything in their life to stop this war, but the 100 brothers kept pushing it to the point where this war was necessary. And so the 5 brothers now had to stand their ground. And because of the situation, the story of Mahabharata is so beautiful. The situation is now where if the 5 brothers decide not to take this step, they're basically almost thrown to the dust. The leader of 100 brothers had tried to kill the 5 brothers and he was unsuccessful. And they know that if they say that no war, we don't want your land, but the 100 brothers will still come and try and kill them. So he needs to take this stand, and there are people who are dependent on him. So he needs to take this stand against these 100 brothers. Even though they are his relatives, he has to take this stand. Now, if we look at our hand, this is what represents the 5 brothers. So the first brother is Dharma or Yudhishthir, where even though he is from warrior caste, he is more of a heart of learned Brahmin. He knows all the dharmas, he knows all the scriptures. He is amazingly deeply educated being. War is not his way of doing it, so he also tried his best to stop this war. Then the second brother is Arjuna, who is the warrior. So the first is Dharma, second is Arjuna, who is the warrior, who is the one who is absolutely fantastic. He is really good in archery. Any weapon you give him, he is fantastic. His chosen weapon is archery. Then the next brother is Bhima. Bhim is very strong. He is absolutely strong and he is known for his strength. And then the twins, the younger twins, who are really good in medicines. So all these 5 brothers united are very strong. And these brothers are now supported by some other kings as well. And they're all standing with them to fight this war. Now, when we look at our life, there comes this point where sometimes we have to decide that enough is enough. And this is where these 5 brothers are now, that they have gone through so much, they've been pushed around so much, that they need to take these weapons in their hands and they have to fight this war. Now this war is against the gurus or the grandfather who they love so much. And these people have chosen to fight against the five brothers. And Krishna says that they're doing their duty and you have to do your duty. Now, when we sit outside and listen to all this, both sides seems correct. Now, Duryodhana, even though he is the leader of the 100 cousins, he is very much also loved, and there are temples of him in India. So he was loved, he was just as well, but he got greedy, and that greed of, he could have simply divided the land between the two sides, and this war was not necessary. After some time, some deliberation back and forth, the five brothers said, okay, just give us 5 towns, small towns, and we are happy. And then the 100 brothers, the leader of that, Duryodhana, said that, no, I'm not going to give you a tiny inch of land. Then it was too much for the 5 brothers, and they said, okay, that's it. We are going to take the weapons in our hands and we're going to fight this war. So this is all happening in the war field. This is where the Krishna is answering the question about life and death. Now, how much time has passed? We really don't know, because it could have been just few seconds and it's happening in Arjuna's mind, and it could have been 700 verses time has passed, a lot of questions are asked, a lot of answers are given. We don't know. But what happens after this is Arjuna do take that weapon in his hand and he does fight this war. Now, if we sit out and we think that how come a divine being as a Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to take a weapon in his hand and fight against someone. And here Arjuna asks this question also, like, why you are encouraging me to fight? And the questions Arjuna asks basically are the same questions which arise in our mind. Why me? Why I had to fight this war? Who am I to take all this burden on my shoulders? All these questions which may arise in our mind in a situation like this, like where we are cornered and we have to do these things which we may not like, but which are necessary to protect humanity at that point. So the Arjuna had to do this. But Arjuna's questions are really exactly what will come in our mind. So he does ask these questions and Krishna answers them. Now, Krishna answers them in a way like, it's very poetically, Krishna answers them that you are a warrior. You have taken birth in a warrior caste and you are prince. You cannot move back from your duties. Now, here also the karma, law of karma is explained, that there is a reason why you have taken birth as this, in this life, as this prince. And it is your duty that you need to fight this war. Then Krishna also explains about the law of karma. We also get the concept of Atma, Paramatma. We also get a concept of karma, dharma. All these are explained beautifully in this Bhagavad Gita. Just 700 verses. And these 700 verses are full of wisdom of yoga. This is where the mind is asking questions and the higher intellect, which is Krishna here, is explaining these questions. Sometimes I have been asked, is Arjuna driven by egoic mind? Which mind I'm talking about? So I'm answering this question here. When we say egoic mind, we start thinking that just the aggressive egoness. No, the shyness is also ego. So all these thoughts are basically, yes, egoic mind. And here the ego is telling him that, he shouldn't fight against this because these are his friends, his family, his loved ones. And sometimes when we look at our own lives, sometimes we have to say no to our loved ones. Sometimes we have to stand up against them. We can't just accept because they are loved ones, everything they're doing is right. And this is what basically represents here. He needs to take that weapon against his loved ones. Even though it is extremely painful for him, he has to do it. And that's why, for example, kids standing against parents, sometimes they had to rebel. And this is what representation of that. You will see that there are a lot of interpretation of Bhagavad Gita. You will see that there are many, many interpretations. And this is what is amazing, that every interpretation is fantastic. And they've taken these verses and try to understand. And obviously, their own sanskaras come into the play. And they will make sense of it according to their life. So this is what beauty of Bhagavad Gita is. Bhagavad Gita is basically, I always say that it's like a funnel. You can see there are many concepts which are brought together and beautifully married together, use them into how to live our life. So there are, as I said, that the concept of Sanatan dharma, the concept of eternally living your life. There were many, many thought processes in ancient India. And these thought processes from, different way of living. One example can be that the divine is out there, and so Paramatma, and this is Atma. And if we live the life of surrendering and acknowledging the divine out there, and we are a small part of that, then the Atma Paramatma connection, and living life of surrender. This is where the Bhakti Yoga, Bhakti Marga comes in. Okay? So Bhakti Marga is that. It's a path of duality, something out there and we are here. Then also the path of oneness, where the divine is within us. And you also see that Krishna says that I am within you. So you see that concept as well. So Krishna being within us, then we don't have to look out. We have Krishna constantly within us, and that higher buddhi, we call it, the voice, the higher mind knows from right and wrong. This is where wisdom of yoga we also call inner guru. And that is the inner guru is always there. It's just that our self-doubt, our hundreds of thoughts kind of like bring this self-doubt up. So these are a few concepts and you can see all this is there in Bhagavad Gita. So all these, and these are just two thought processes. I said there are many, many, many thousands of thought processes which have like brought into Bhagavad Gita and woven them beautifully into throughout the Mahabharata, and Bhagavad Gita is the essence of that wisdom. And where just reading the Bhagavad Gita and meditating on that, contemplating on that, we get answers to our questions about the life, about how to live our life. All this is true yoga, really. This internal war is always there, and our self-doubt, say example, we're doing any project or anything, we always worry about, is it going to work? This is how many people will book in, what's going to happen? How will I pay my bills? All these are true worries, yes. So we see that, and there are hundreds of them. And what you have is yourself, and you can't control the outside world. You can control what is happening within. And this is where you do your practices, you do your karma, and hope for the best. It may happen, it may not happen, that's okay, but at least you have done your dharma by doing your karma. That's what Bhagavad Gita talks about. Another question often asked is there any reason why we're going through certain experiences? And I'm answering that question here. Always a reason why we go through these experiences and why we need to go through that and what we take from that. We always have, a lesson there, and staying with that, understanding that. It's amazing how itself will be answered. Another question I have been always asked is, when Indian children learn these wisdom of Bhagavad Gita or wisdom of Mahabharata or scriptures, is there any school? Is it part of your school learning? Where do you learn this? And I'm answering that question here. Good question. So there is no such a thing as Sunday school or anything in India. You learn, you learn it as a part of life. So we have a lot of festivals. All the festivals are woven into these, for example, Krishna's birthday or Shiva's birthday and things like that. And that increases curiosity. And these stories, my grandmother, I came to know all about these stories from my grandmother. My grandmother was blind, but always used to chant the divine name. And we kids love to sit around her and listen to the stories. And that's how these stories were introduced to us, and literally in the forms of stories. And what child doesn't love story? I mean, there are literature courses, yes, but it's not woven into our public school education. But the thing is, growing up in India, there is no escape. You will learn about these things in form of stories. And when we learn in the form of stories, it was learned there is a fantastical layer to it. And imagine a child learning about kings and prince and princesses and what happens about, wars. And it was all fantastical. It was good for kids and also for grandparents because they kept that connection going. And the thing is that these stories grow with you. Yeah, because there is so much of this wisdom is there. So in our schooling, we have some of our recent kings who lived like a very just life. And so the King Shivaji, who was from my state, was very just king. So we have heard about his stories. But then his stories also, where his thought process came from, it came from Bhagavad Gita. So that's how, and then he also, like in the story format, it is beautiful, Bhagavad Gita. As a child, I remember oh, this is fantastic. And then I grew up a little bit towards teenage and I'm like, oh, that's what it meant. So the stories grow with you as you start understanding more and more of life. The story unpack more and more truth. And we start understanding that, for me, it was interesting when I personally went through a meltdown, understood Arjuna's dilemma and all these thought processes. And I'm like, oh my God, how true is this? And I had to choose now side here, that what is right and what is wrong, and how do I choose this side? And both sides feel correct. So what do I do here? A lot of time, there is no outside help. We have to take this decision on our own because it's our life and we have to take that responsibility. So we have to trust in our guts and take the step. And again, it may be right, it may be wrong, but that's life. We have to make these decisions for ourselves and for our maybe family or people dependent on us. Just like Arjuna had to take these decision to fight the war to help the people who are dependent on him. So he had to do it. And that's why Krishna was suggesting. As a child, I always used to ask my grandmother, but how come a god who is Krishna wants Arjuna to fight? That doesn't sound right, And Krishna actually breaks a lot of concept of what we thought in India was God. So Krishna loves to live the life fully. If you know the Krishna stories, like how it is, he enjoys the life. So even the prasad or the offerings to Krishna is not just one yummy food. It is 56 types of foods offered to Krishna. So he called Bhogi and Yogi. Bhogi means the person who really enjoys the pleasures of life. So he is a Bhogi and Yogi. He had many wives. And all this is basically, you can see that why Krishna is that he is the God who says that here in this context in Bhagavad Gita, that he is the being, divine being, who is full of life. He enjoys the life. It's not like a life of renouncing. He is not suggesting that. And he's in fact suggesting that stay here and you can still be enlightened. And that's why Krishna is more loved by a lot of people, because he's not talking about go and live in jungle or Himalayas and renounce everything. In fact, he's suggesting that stay here, be yogi here in this now. And that's the beauty of Krishna's response. So basically, ethically living his life. He had many wives, but the reason for that was they were the princesses who were stolen from their home, and they were basically, it was captured by a demon, and then Krishna went and saved them, and they said, who is going to marry us? And Krishna said, I will. And so he basically liberated them. From the Indian point of view, if you see that at that time, if a girl is lived other than father's house, then she is not, pure enough to marry. And so he liberated these girls by marrying them. And so he also used to wear beautiful silks and things like that. So he loved to live his life to fullest. And also at the same time, he was true yogi from heart. So that's the Krishna who is giving the Bhagavad Gita, explaining what is life basically through Bhagavad Gita. Like basically it's a question and answer here, and these are questions asked about basically what is life and why as a human being we have to go through this, and what is the answer for that. And then Krishna gives the answer. And basically I suggest, if you can find somewhere there is a direct translation of these, what we call it, sutras or verses of Bhagavad Gita, then you interpret them, sit and meditate on that and interpret them according to your understanding. And I think that's the best way to understand Bhagavad Gita, because every verse, and you will find that, especially I found it, that anytime I go back to it, I find it new information, even though they're the same verses, because my life has changed, right? So now my understanding may be more evolved, that I understand more fully now what's happening in Bhagavad Gita. And so it actually grows with you. That's the beauty of all these Indian, what we call philosophical teachings, that it grows with us because our life experience increases. We become wiser. We start understanding, okay, this could happen to any of us. Because until I went through total meltdown, I wasn't sure what the hell it was. Like I couldn't understand it sitting outside. But when we are in it, we try to understand that, yes, physically the strong body, but we can't lift a finger. Like I have gone through that kind of stuff. And then I realized, wow, this was what Arjuna was going at that point. He literally couldn't face the world. Like he couldn't hold his bow and arrow. This strong warrior who had never lost a war. And he went to that level of, that I can't fight, I can't think, I'm shaking, and I don't want to do this. And how many times we go through that, at least once in our lifetime that happens for all of us. And then this is where Bhagavad Gita's all the questions about life and death, all the questions about what is karma, what is yoga, what is true yoga, and also Atma, Paramatma, Dharma, all these concepts are very clear. You will also find that Bhagavad Gita, there is, it's said that Krishna is the one God. But if we see that the Yoga Sutra is fully based into Bhagavad Gita, you can see that lots of concepts are quite similar. But Yoga Sutra is not even talking about any gods or goddesses. Yoga Sutra is saying Ishvara Pranidham. What is that Ishvara is literally up to you. It could be nature, it could be deity, it could be anything. And so we are given this even freedom from that in our Yoga Sutra, that what you believe divine is completely with you. So that's what Ishvara Pranidat. So you may believe that Ishvara is maybe nature, and that's okay, because if you believe in that, this is where the Bhakti Yoga comes in. If you believe in that, where our mind goes, our prana will follow. So that give and take of prana happens, and we deepen our surrender and we deepen our practices. Okay, so let's take a look at like hundreds of thoughts. Obviously, we will then pay attention to what is more, right, in our thought process, because they will be circulating more. But if you look at our 5 positive thoughts, if they are scattered, we don't see their strength. But if they become a feast, they are strong. And this is what we need to unite that thought and really become strong, that they can face that 100 thoughts. Then another thing is like why meditation and how we bring it into our life according to Krishna. So the Krishna says that all the answers are within us, because Krishna is within us. We all have that inner wisdom, the inner guru. And so just becoming aware of that 100 thoughts and 5 thoughts, for example, unless we internalize our awareness through meditation, these practices, where we teach our mind to calm down so we can see actually what is the true picture. So unless we sit down for meditation and start noticing what is really happening with our thoughts, what's really is that Krishna uses the word Maya. So what happens that the illusions around us, we start thinking that these are truths. This is what my true self is. But that is not our true self. We start identifying these hundreds of thoughts as our true self. But the reality of that is our thought is energy. And also the thoughts is energy. We are made out of energy. So if we constantly focus on negative energy, the negative thoughts, then we'll start vibrating with negative energy. So what if we just sit back and become observer and understand that, okay, these are hundreds of thoughts. So there are also 5 thoughts which are good thoughts. And we start focusing on that. That is going to give, where our mind goes, prana follows. That will give those thoughts the strength. And that's what meditation does. It creates these strength within us to face whatever comes up. The outside reality may not change. But what is going to change is our response to that outside. And this is what we can only strengthen ourselves and focus on ourselves through. And meditation is such a beautiful thing that it will get rid of all this Maya, the illusion around us, which we think is true, our true self. That is not at all true. Our true self is very pure. Our mind is sattvic according to Sankhya philosophy. But what happens is through our senses we absorb all these things, and then it is going to give coloring to the mind. But mind itself is sattvic. So when we start stilling the mind, we start meditating or doing the pratyahara practices. All these practices is going to move us towards stillness, and that stillness is purity, that the sattvic practices. And that is going to bring you towards your true self. And that's what essence of Bhagavad Gita is basically. Come back to your true self through meditation, through surrendering. And what are we surrendering? Surrendering whatever is not serving us. Let it go and come back to what is your dharma, what is your karma. All your human birth, according to wisdom of yoga, is to move towards enlightenment. Until we don't do that, we'll still be suffering. That's why the suffering is. Once we understand that we need to move towards enlightenment, because if we see, we are constantly looking at pleasures, but we truly actually searching for ananda, the true joy, literally. Ananda, there is no direct translation. Ananda is that eternal bliss, we can call it. And that is the purpose of human life, according to wisdom of yoga. And till we do not acknowledge that, we'll go through the cycles of life and death according to yoga philosophy, till we reach to that state of enlightenment. And that's what is true essence of being human, really. And we reach to that through meditation. We reach to that through really just focusing on any physical sensations, noticing what's happening with your breath. Even that can anchor ourselves into ourselves. So that's really a beautiful way to start. And then once you're there, you will know what to take next step, because you are connecting with your higher self. So you know subconsciously what next. Thank you for joining me today in this discussion about Bhagavad Gita. This was part of a lecture I was offering on Bhagavad Gita. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate that you're taking this time out of your day. Don't forget to subscribe. Take care. Bye for now.